This is Suzanne Snyder, and the date is April 7th, 2018. Let's go ahead and start. Suzanne, where were you born?
I was born in Anchorage, Alaska at Providence Hospital in 1995.
And where do you live currently?
Right now, I live in East Anchorage, so still born and raised here in Anchorage, and I'm living in the Russian Jack area.
What about your parents? Where were they born?
My mom was born in Bethel, Alaska. She grew up there with her brothers and sisters and eventually moved to Stony River, a very, very small village nearby, and then moved to Anchorage when she was in her 20s, I believe, and that's where she raised her family. And my dad was born in Anchorage as well. I'm actually a third generation Alaskan because his parents were also born here, so yeah.
So your mom was born in Bethel, but you said she moved here to Anchorage to start a family. Do you know why she chose to do that?
I think just because of her experiences in Bethel, while she loved it, she thought that the city was maybe a better place to raise her children and have them go to school and maybe have better opportunities.
Okay. I suppose she was kind of right there because you're currently a student at UAA.
Yeah.
So, and your dad, let's see, are your parents still together?
No. My parents were divorced when I was about 4 years old, and they still keep in touch. It's fine. And my dad still lives in Anchorage, and my mom actually, after I graduated from high school, decided to move back to Bethel for a while for work and kind of to see old friends. And my aunt and uncle still live out in Bethel as well, so she has her connections there, and I visit often. So
Okay.
yeah.
So you're still close with both your parents then?
Yes.
Is there any difficulty staying in touch with your mom even though she's out in Bethel?
Not really. We talk on the phone often, and I do like to visit Bethel whenever I can. I went just over spring break, and she visits here often, like for birthdays and certain holidays. So we get to see each other pretty often.
So you were born in Anchorage and you currently live in Anchorage. Have you ever lived anywhere else, anywhere out of state?
I went to New York for my first year of college, actually. And so I was there for, I guess, about 9 months. And I went to Pace University during that time. And I really enjoyed New York, I think, more as a place to visit than like a place to live long term. Because the school that I went to wasn't my favorite. It was kind of more business feeling than actually an educational environment. And New York is a fascinating place. There's a lot of incredible theater and art, and I loved that aspect of it, but I think I can get enough of that from visiting. I feel like it's a little too overwhelming for long term.
Mm-hmm. So did you work when you were in New York at all?
I did. The first semester I wanted to just kind of get a good feel for things, so I just stayed at the school and used some of my savings from working in Anchorage before. And then the second semester I got a job at Shake Shack, actually. It was my first restaurant job, and it was pretty cool. It was, some of the best burgers I've ever had, and it was a really great experience. And I think I even made a shake for James Franco once. So
James Franco,
that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. What was your favorite and least favorite thing about New York City?
So I would say my favorite thing is probably all of the theater and the incredible talent and all of the amazing opportunities that people have there, and just kind of the energy. It's a very exciting energy every day. But my least favorite things, probably the fact that you can't see any stars at night, even. I met people in New York who had never seen a star. And I the trash, there's a lot of trash in the streets. It's not exactly the most environmentally friendly place, and I guess that would be my major complaint.
Okay. Do you feel like you'll stay in Alaska for most of your life?
I could see that happening because I like where I grew up, and I am planning on being a teacher, and I'd love to contribute to the education system for Alaska where I grew up, and I could see myself teaching here long term, but I also am very interested in travel, so I want to do a lot of that. I might do some teaching abroad. And if I do live in Alaska long term, it's very important to me that I get to travel often. So I would take summers and other breaks that I can to do any kind of travel that I can. So
Yeah, traveling can be a little bit expensive though. What are wages like for teachers in Alaska?
for teachers in Alaska, it's actually pretty good compared to especially the lower 48. We have, a higher cost of living here, so I think that probably contributes to it a little bit. But yeah, we get pretty good wages, especially if you have experience and a master's degree. And I think I will be able to get by on that wage and be able to save enough to do the travel that I want to do.
When you say teaching, do you mean elementary kids or high schoolers or what?
I am planning on being an elementary teacher. I'm currently majoring in elementary education at UAA, and I'm almost done with my degree program. I have just one more year, so I'll be graduating in the spring of 2019. And I have already done some observation in the classrooms with elementary students, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I don't know yet what grade I'm planning on teaching because I have had experiences in classrooms from K through 6, and I've just enjoyed all of them so much. It's like a really rewarding, fantastic experience. I've really enjoyed it, and I think that after changing my major a number of times, it's really satisfying to know that I am so certain that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So
I've read that Anchorage is a pretty diverse city. I imagine that the schools are also pretty diverse. Did you witness that as well?
I did, yes. In the Title I schools, especially, there is a huge amount of diversity all over Anchorage, and I have noticed that for some of the schools, especially with the Title I schools, I think that our curriculum could use maybe some changes to better serve the students. I think we could be a little bit more culturally responsive with teaching by providing more programs and more of a curriculum in the classrooms that really represent all of the students that go to these schools, because representation matters, and I feel like we're not quite there yet. I think there are some really good strides that we're making, but we need to go further with that. And I would also say that the diversity in the schools when it comes to the students is very impressive. There are students from a lot of different places, and that's great. But our teachers and staff, I've noticed, are not so diverse. So the people working at the schools don't completely represent the students that go to the schools. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it would be nice if we were able to get more of a variety of teachers, men and women, from all different backgrounds. So
Well, if diversification is your goal, local politics plays a big role in that. Are you involved in local politics at all?
So I've never run for anything myself, and I'm not sure if I could see myself doing that. Maybe school board someday, but I do like to keep myself very informed on local politics. I think it's really important when you're a citizen to keep yourself informed so that you can help with the decision making. You can really understand maybe why things are the way that they are. And yeah, I feel like it's really important to stay informed. So I read up on elections before I vote. I make sure that I get to know certain candidates when I have the chance to meet them. I go to a lot of like coffee events with different people running for office, and I think it's really beneficial to inform yourself on as much as you can when it comes to local politics.
Yeah, would you say that the Anchorage community has become more involved in recent years with local politics?
I think so, and I think that people are taking into account the citizens more than they used to. Like, I think that people are encouraging others to meet with them more often. Like, I've had coffee with like Ivy Sponholtz, and I've met Forrest Dunbar and Lisa Murkowski and all sorts of different people in politics, local, state, etc. And I think that I think politics in general are starting to kind of lean toward hearing from the people more, which is a really good direction, I think, that we need to go in even further.
Anchorage just conducted a mail-in election process. What were your feelings on that? How do you think that went?
So initially I was a little bit nervous because I thought that, maybe the turnout won't be so great. I hoped that it would be high, and I thought that it was possible that it would be, but I still had those concerns, especially with the different items on the ballot, because I felt very strongly about some of those. And I was very pleased to see that we totally broke the record on the voter amounts. So we were able to reach, I think, over 80,000 votes. So that's pretty impressive. And I sort of miss, I guess, going to the ballots in person, and feeling like, oh, I'm turning this in and I'm doing my civic duty. But I think that's still, I think, an option for people who want to do it that way. But the convenience of this is very helpful, I think, for some people. Especially it's helpful for people who have disabilities, who struggle to get to the ballot boxes, and then the people who work long hours, like doctors and nurses and, people in various occupations. They have trouble going when it's just like offered during certain hours of the day. But when you have the opportunity to just mail out your ballot whenever it's convenient for you, it's certainly helpful.
You said that one of or multiple of the propositions were of particular interest to you or concern to you. Which one in particular, or just all of them generally?
So it was mostly Proposition 1, which was the, commonly known as the bathroom bill. And it was really an anti-trans bill more than anything. And I was concerned because, for one, I didn't think that it could be enforced very efficiently anyway, so it seemed like more of a waste of time and trying to solve a problem that didn't exist. And on that note, we have a pretty wide transgender community in Anchorage, and I have not heard of a single report of any violence, especially in a bathroom, by a transgender individual. So I think that this was absolutely unnecessary. And with this, students as young as 8 would have been required to have their birth certificate and show it when they want to use the bathroom. So it just seemed really ridiculous to me, and I'm happy to say that it did not pass. So we're all free to use the bathrooms that we feel most comfortable in, and I think that's important. So it's great.
All right, well, we're going to broaden the scope a little bit here. Alaska generally is an Arctic state. It's the only Arctic state in the United States, and therefore it is particularly relevant, I would say, to global warming. Would you agree with that assessment? And what are your kind of assessments on the whole global warming debate?
Yeah, so Alaska is heavily impacted by climate change. And I think we really need to get moving on some of these things. We've got a lot of permafrost melting, and birds' migratory patterns are changing. And I feel like all of the evidence that we have out there is extremely obvious, that climate change is real and it's affecting us, and there are a lot of problems associated with it. Entire communities in certain areas are moving because the ice is melting and they have to move inland more, and that's really harming their way of life. So there are a number of issues that we need to address, and I think the politics of it is kind of getting in the way of that progress.
Is Anchorage doing enough?
I could say that we could always do more. I think there are a number of people and a number of groups that are probably working toward things, but they can only do so much when there's so much pushback from, people in politics. So I think, yeah, we can do so much more. I think recycling and things like that have gained popularity in recent years, recent decades, but it's just like a first step, and we need to move a lot faster than we have been.
When you go out to Bethel to see your mom, do you think that Bethel is doing a better job, worse job, or about the same as Anchorage?
I would say significantly worse.
Significantly worse.
They don't recycle at all. I think they don't even have the option to. I actually had a plastic water bottle on the plane with me that I had to buy, and I finished it, and when I got to the airport I asked my mom, hey, is there any place for me to recycle this? And she was like, no, there's nothing in Bethel for that. And I think Alaska really struggles with things like that because we don't have a lot of the resources that we need, especially out in the smaller cities like Bethel and the villages, because we have to fly everywhere, and you can't just drive to every location because of our road systems. They don't go to every community. So I think we need to figure something out for those communities that don't have access to the big recycling centers like Anchorage.
So in Anchorage, maybe there's some more work that could be done in terms of recycling and environmental friendliness. What about other forms of well-being around your community? Are people interacting with each other in positive ways? Do people have access to health care that they might need? How do you feel the status of your community is?
I feel like in some areas more than others, we are doing all right with things like healthcare. I'm happy that we have a number of options. I'm happy that we have Planned Parenthood still, as much as that's being challenged, so often. It's just I'm glad we still have that. And in terms of the community friendliness, I think people in general in Alaska are typically very friendly with each other. We'll say hi as we pass by, but I think that in recent years it seems like things have gotten a little bit more hostile. We're all worried for our safety because of all the things that have been in the news in recent years, and yeah, it seems a little bit concerning, and I'm always worried about my car being stolen or our house being broken into, things like that. So it's a problem. I think that a lot of our politicians and the mayor, I think everyone's really working on public safety as basically our number one concern. But I think, more can be done. And I know that there are a lot of complaints about, especially like SB 91, with so many people just being let out and things like that. I think it's more complicated than the Facebook lawyers would would say that it is. But yeah, I look forward to a safer community because Anchorage does feel different than when I was younger.
You mentioned being at risk of property crime, like having a car stolen. Do you ever feel concerned, genuinely concerned about being a victim of violent crime?
As a woman, especially, I do. I work downtown, and when I'm leaving work, sometimes at 8 or 9 p.m., I get a little bit scared walking alone. And I've had a number of friends who have actually been harmed. They've been, I've had friends who have been murdered, actually, in recent years. And then recently another friend was like robbed at gunpoint in his own house, and it just seems like it's happening so frequently to so many people I know. So it's not always just the people who are themselves involved in, drugs and things like that. It's people who have no idea, don't see it coming. Sometimes things can be random. So it's not all just the drug community here. It's so much more. It's branched out, and I feel like everyone's kind of at risk of these things. So I try to do my best to keep myself safe, which unfortunately can mean holding your keys between your fingers when you're walking to have some sort of like potential weapon if you need it. And locking your doors every day and putting extra measures, in your house to keep it safe. And then not starting your car ahead of time in the winter if you don't have an auto start, or getting a separate key, starting it and locking it and using your other key to get in. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's shift the discussion a little bit towards something a little bit more happy, a little bit more
Sure.
positive. You mentioned earlier that you really like traveling. What would you say your favorite country to visit was?
That's a tough one. But I really enjoyed visiting, let's see. I enjoyed Indonesia very, very much when I went there.
When did you go there?
I went there over winter break and a number of other countries in Southeast Asia as well. And I think it was just a very, very fascinating way of life there. Everyone seemed happy and friendly, and I expected, especially Jakarta, I expected it to be a little bit more, I guess, scary or uncomfortable, especially because I was a woman going there without wearing anything like a hijab or anything like that, and I was worried that maybe people would be uncomfortable about that or something, but actually everyone just came up to me and treated me kind of like a celebrity. They were like, wow, look at her. And I felt like I was, Taylor Swift going on a vacation. It just felt like everyone was happy to see me and they were amazed that I was there. And I really loved visiting because everyone was just so kind, and I think it helped me realize that a lot of times when you travel, there are a number of misconceptions about different locations, and I like to put those things to rest by visiting myself and learning from my own experiences in these places. So Indonesia was great, and I got to see a lot of monkeys there. That was fun, and went to the monkey forest and they crawled on me and it was very enjoyable. They were goofy.
That sounds really cute.
Yeah, it was cute. And then Another place I really enjoyed was Vietnam and Cambodia as well. They both had so much history there, especially with the Vietnam War and the Khmer Rouge. So I learned so much, and it was extremely emotional, but important, and a very, very valuable experience. And then after that, Thailand, and that was a short trip. I feel like I needed more time there. I want to go back. But when I was there, I got to go to an elephant nature park, which was incredible. I got to see elephants and feed them by kind of mashing up like rice and bananas and putting it all together in a big ball and just feeding it to them. Fed them watermelons too, and then we would walk down in the forest just alongside the elephants and walk and take them over to a huge field where they could just roam free. And then we would go down into the river and we would like wash them and swim with them, and it was incredible. And these were all elephants that had been saved from other like tourist traps, like things where tourists ride on their backs, which is actually a very harmful industry. The elephants, if they are being ridden, it means that they've been abused to get to that point, and there are really no exceptions to that. They've also been rescued from things like circuses, where they've been required to do a lot of different acts that they shouldn't be required to do. They should be able to just be elephants and roam free. So this was just incredible. I loved it.
Okay. Some of those countries you mentioned, like Cambodia, unfortunately are a little bit lower on the human development scale. Did you witness any shocking instances of poverty, and how did that make you feel?
So, for the most part, I was in, like, the main cities. Like, I was in Phnom Penh for a while, and I didn't notice too much there, but there were some instances. I mean, obviously, it's not a rich country, but it seems like, for the most part, people were happy, in the city anyway, and I think that was it was kind of nice to see, because the people there didn't require so much money to be happy. I think they were able to get by as long as they have food and water, and it just seems like we take a lot for granted. So that's kind of what I learned in this travel.
When you say we, do you mean Anchorage, Alaskans, Americans?
I think for the most part, Americans and people who do live in the developed and developing countries, I think we often take more for granted than we realize. Like fresh drinking water, like safe place to sleep. I just think that while everyone did seem happy there, I mean, there is just always that thought going through my head, like, these people don't have a lot, but they can still remain happy. And I feel like that's kind of reassuring, and a little bit depressing at the same time, but I just loved it. I loved the people I met there. And then in Siem Reap, I think maybe I saw a little bit more there in terms of poverty, but for the most part, beyond seeing some children kind of being forced into begging, which was rough, beyond things like that, for the most part, it was a pretty positive experience. So,
do you speak any other languages?
I have learned a little bit of Spanish. I took Spanish throughout much of high school. I feel like I don't know as much as I wish I did. I feel like I didn't have the greatest experience with Spanish classes, so I was kind of left behind in terms of my Spanish knowledge, so I can kind of speak some things, like some basic sentences, and I can read some in Spanish, and then I took a little bit of French about 1.5 years too, so very, very beginning levels of that. But I'd like to further my education in both languages and maybe more.
So when you go traveling abroad and you're in a country that doesn't speak very much Spanish and you can only get by with a limited form of English, how do you approach that issue?
So in more touristy locations, like for example, when I go to Mexico, when I visit Mazatlan, which is a pretty touristy location, most people also speak English, and so it's pretty easy to get by, but I prefer to practice my Spanish as much as I can. So if I go there, I will try to, speak Spanish that I know, the basic levels, and if I spend a long enough time there, it can help me in my Spanish because, applying my knowledge and practicing it with people who grew up with Spanish, I think that's very helpful. And then there are places like Alamos, which is actually where my grandma lives. She is an expat there. She moved just to kind of have her own nice place, very, very affordable. It's a huge villa that probably, if it were in America, it would be, or in North America, whatever, United States. If it were here, it would be millions of dollars.
Wow.
And it was so affordable when she got it, like in the 80s or something. And I've been there twice now, and it's been pretty amazing to see that place and how well it's doing, and I just love visiting Alamos. But my point here is that when I go there are more people there who don't speak English as fluently, so it is more of a struggle for me, but I think it helps me learn a little bit better. So,
do you have a best friend here in Anchorage?
I have a few. I have some friends that I've known since I was very young, like my friend Allison. We have done theater together, and we never really went to school together except for like 7th grade briefly. And I have known her for, I think since we were about 9 years old. And we're still friends. We're still close. And I think she's my longest friend for sure. She's going to be leaving soon, unfortunately, though, because she's going to go to graduate school, I think, in London. And she's probably going to live there.
Oh, that's too bad.
But I plan to visit her because, obviously, as I've explained before, travel is, a huge passion of mine. And this way I can travel and I can see her and probably stay for free, which is nice. So I like having people in different countries.
That's a good thing. Have you ever gone traveling with Allison?
I haven't been able to travel out of state with her. I think because we're both just generally such busy people, we don't really have the time to do those things together. But I could see it happening still. I think that would be so much fun because she also has a passion for traveling. She's been to a number of places. So, I feel like that's totally something I could see happening.
What is your favorite memory of her?
Oh, wow. My favorite memory of Allison. I feel like just when we've done shows together, we've just had this friendly connection where no matter what, and no matter how long it's been, we can always see each other in theater and catch up and just kind of start right back where we left off, Some of my favorite memories would probably just be when we have girls' nights when it's Allison and me and then a few of our other girlfriends, we just have fun nights regardless of where we come from, because we were all from different high schools. We're different ages, most of us, and we just kind of come together through theater for the most part. We're all interested in that, so that's a really powerful connection that we've had.
Okay. How do you plan on mixing your career path in primary education and theater?
Well, it's very, very important to incorporate the arts into education, I think. And I was lucky in my classes to have teachers who also valued that connection. So I learned in school through different forms of art, like theater and like arts like drawing, painting, sculpting. I learned through music, just very, very different forms, because I think differentiated education is important, which is like providing options for students for various approaches to learning. So if students feel that they would like to learn a certain lesson through a different lens, like theater or through sports or various different things, they have that option. And I like to give students some say in how they learn. And I think providing various forms of art in the classroom is helpful in that. And I think the arts are being threatened in education. Programs are often cut because they are not prioritized above other areas, and I think that that's wrong. I think that especially people who are kind of making these decisions without actually being educators themselves, I think they are misinformed, and I would like them to actually maybe go into classrooms and see how the arts are being applied and see how beneficial it is for students, because I think it's really necessary to provide so many different options. So I plan to incorporate theater and the arts into my teaching all the time.
That sounds like a very interesting union between those two fields. But I'm just curious, how come you didn't pursue a career only in theater, like acting?
Right. So that is certainly one of my great interests. I love acting. I love singing. And I could see myself still doing these things for fun. I think as a teacher, I'll work during the day, and then I think I will have opportunities to maybe do a show or two in the community, because rehearsals typically take place in the evenings and shows as well. So I think that I will try to incorporate that into my life a little bit. And then who knows, maybe I'll get discovered and I'll move down to LA and start a new life.
Yeah.
But for now, I think I'm focusing on being a teacher, because that's truly my passion, and I will participate in theater and music whenever I can, as a second passion. But
I guess in terms of earning money in a theater career, it's kind of you strike gold or you don't, right?
Right. And it's a very, very low percentage who do strike the gold. So I think it's a great idea to follow your dreams and to try when you have those dreams, especially, when it's something that you've worked for your whole life. Like I've always been interested in theater, and I have a lot of friends who are also doing that. And I have friends who are in New York doing off-Broadway shows, and they're in shows with people like James Earl Jones, and
wow,
I have friends who are getting pretty close to striking that gold. So it's impressive, and I'm happy for them, and it wouldn't have happened if they were discouraged from reaching this goal, if people kept telling them, hey, you're not going to make any money in this field, maybe they would have stopped. And so I think it's important to think about it in terms of, yeah, you might not make a ton of money through this, at least not right away, but if you keep going, you'll still have some experiences that are just like unforgettable and incredible. And I am so proud of my friends who have gotten there, and I think that even if they're not making the most money right now in that field, usually they work other jobs. And for some people, being that's like starving artist type, like waiting tables while you're trying to go on Broadway, some people don't feel like that's for them, but it does work for a number of people, and I think it's working for a number of my friends, and I'm really proud of them for going for their goals. So I think that for me, I was able to kind of balance my passions, and while I love theater and I think it would be great to be on Broadway and do things like that, I also have such a passion for teaching, so I'm able to be completely satisfied with that while doing theater and exploring my other passions on the side. And so, yeah, that works great for me.
Do you feel like the Anchorage community, your community here, is appreciative of theater? Does it engage in theater a lot?
I think Anchorage is a very, very great theater community. I think we have so many different theater communities around town, and we have a lot of opportunities. I think it's a great place for art in general, and I think it's become even more arts inclusive in the past few years, so that's fantastic. I think there are a number of things that could improve in terms of art, like maybe more support for the arts community, and maybe placing more importance on things like the issues that do take place in the arts communities. Like there are things like sexual assault and things like that do happen fairly frequently in the arts community, and people kind of turn a blind eye because, this person's so talented or things like that. So I feel like that's one of the major issues that we do have in our community. But beyond that, I feel like the arts in Anchorage are thriving. So
that's nice to hear. I think there's several theater companies in Anchorage. Which one's your favorite?
My favorite? That's tough. Right now I work at Centertix downtown, so I have a lot of exposure to different companies and different promoters that bring shows up here. So I have seen shows, at the Atwood Concert Hall and the Discovery Theater and the Sidney Lawrence. I really enjoy Perseverance Theater, and I see a lot of different shows there from various corporations or companies that I think are just great. And another one that I love is Midnight Sun Theater by David Block, and I'm a little bit biased because I have been involved in theater with him specifically since I was like 9, and he was my drama teacher in high school. So yeah, I'm very happy to see that his theater company is doing so well. And yeah, I've done a few shows with Midnight Sun as well, and I love it. So that's one of my favorites. And ACT is also great, Anchorage Community Theater. It's a fantastic little theater, kind of tucked away, but it has so much business still, because they just put on such quality shows, and they have a great energy there, really friendly people working there. It's fantastic. So
wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you having this discussion with me. I have one final question for you. What is your favorite thing in your life right now?
Wow. My favorite thing in my life is, it's probably just how positive I'm feeling about my future right now, because I've been thinking about how I'm going to be a teacher, and that has just been so exciting for me and so positive, and that's certainly one of my favorite things for sure. Beyond that, I love my pets. I love my pet rabbit and hedgehog and guinea pig. So I have some pretty unique pets, and yeah, I love them very much. Those are probably some of my favorite things in my life right now. So yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'd say.
Well, thank you very much, Suzanne.
Yes, thank you.